They usually are. I actually see some friendly names. Um, I'm Michael Piers with the Southwest Wine Center, Yavapai College. Actually, some of the people who are on this meeting are probably in this picture scattered throughout the vineyard. This is one of our 2 vineyards that are on campus. We have a total of 13 acres. And Isaac asked that I just kind of do a general overview of grape growing, not only in the Verde Valley, but in Arizona. So um, I'm happy to be interrupted and take the conversation elsewhere as you guys have any questions. I get asked what wine growing looks like in Arizona. People assume I'm going to give them a straight answer, which I won't, because I think it does a disservice to grape growing in Arizona. There's a lot of diversity. We've got a pretty big state. You'll see the 3 main growing regions have the 3 big grape clusters there. And then I've added some other ones. There's some folks over in the Young area, Mayor, Dewey, also Chino Valley, and then Kingman. And I'm sure I could probably add a few more. There are pioneers out there trying to figure out where it's at, where we could do it. But it wasn't only 20 years ago that we didn't really have a good understanding. So there's probably a few more spots that will show themselves if they have the right soil, water, climate, all of that. I'll show you the 3 main growing regions because I think it's worth seeing what has been proven to work. Sonoyta down here at the bottom left was established as an American viticultural area all the way back in 1984. There's a large concentration of wineries there, and once you get into that area, you do feel like you're kind of in wine country. However, Sonoyta does not have the large expanse of plantings like Wilcox does. And the reason why I like this Google Earth picture is you can see all those pivot plantings. So you see how much other agriculture is in the Wilcox Basin. This agriculture does help kind of support the wine industry, and that there are resources there to help the grape growers. I anticipate water scarcity, and there might be some pretty serious debates coming in the next couple decades, because this is kind of a closed water basin. It's surrounded by a number of pretty expansive mountains, which feed into the groundwater, but all of those farms you see there are kind of fighting for the same water. As a matter of fact, south of the Wilcox AVA, there are some irrigation non-expansion zones, which they have illustrated some shortages of water, and the state's kind of monitoring that. Here's where we're at in the Verde Valley. You can kind of see I-17 coming up through, and Sedona's up at the top. We have, I'm gonna maybe go out on a limb here a little bit, the largest range and elevation compared to those other 2 AVAs. We've got high 5,000 feet up by Jerome, and then all the way down at the bottom southeastern corner in Camp Verde is going to be the lowest spot. Because of that, we do get airflow that goes and follows the river down through the valley floor. When I was thinking about the air breaks that I was watching in James's presentation, each of these 3 different AVAs has a different potential to utilize stuff like that based on the airflow. My family has a vineyard down in Wilcox, and the standard practice of farming, or maybe the standard thought process for orientating your vines, would be a north-south orientation. You use good exposure to the sun, and then you pull your leaves on the east side so it's not on the hot sun west-facing side. However, the prevailing winds in Wilcox whip east to west so strongly that just about everybody's actually changed their row orientation, and they're planting east-west. We've got such diversity here in the Verde Valley that the air currents really aren't consistent. And I think people plant their row orientation more specific to their site than something like Wilcox. There's a pretty consistent airflow across there. Now, I will say with windbreaks, you need to be careful that you do have good air drainage. And in the springtime, you could possibly have cold weather, which could lead to, spring frost, right, once you get first growth. And you don't want to create windbreaks that don't allow for the air to actually flow out. So conventional wisdom is if you're going to have an air break, you kind of have it in ways that don't impede some of that flow. So you need to be very careful. Conversely, in the harvest time, when we get a lot of monsoon rains, we want to make sure we have good airflow through our vineyard to keep humidities low. Now, the last 2 years, we didn't have the same rains as we typically have, so that's not been as much of an issue, but hopefully we get back to, nice wet July, August time, because we just simply need the water in this state. I wish we had a better survey, official statewide survey for me to give you. This was a USDA survey back in 2013. My best estimate, and this is my number, 1650, would be how many acres we have in production right now. I'm going to show you another survey we did of the Verde Valley when we were putting together the Verde Valley AVA petition. But these two tables on the bottom, Yavapai County, there was about 70 acres in 2013. When we did a survey, I skipped it. When we did a survey in 2016, you'll see on the top right, and I think we did a pretty good job getting a comprehensive survey at this time. The number was 124, right about 125 acres. There's certainly been acreage included since then, including at the college. But this gives you an idea of the diversity. Those are all different varieties that growers reported that they were planting. This is another reason why I don't really give straight answers for what Arizona wine is, because it can be a lot of different things, because we've got the climate that can ripen, a large breadth of different varieties. So it allows us, I think, to carve out a niche of our own. Each producer is a little bit different, but then I think over time, we're going to see each of those three regions kind of diverge and have their own character, which will be something that is marketable and bodes well for agricultural tourism to kind of market the region as a wine growing destination. Here's another study from NAU. Believe it or not, this already feels old. 2017, 56 million in economic output, about 640 full-time jobs. Certainly the number has gone up from there. We'll see what 2020 does once everything's said and done. There's definitely a blip, although I think the grape growing aspect, and also now that our tasting rooms are back open, the wineries are able to kind of get back up to speed, but we're still not up to where we were this time last year. So what can you do for small acreage farming? I saw in James's presentation, he presented some other things we could possibly farm. And there's a reason why I think grape growers end up doing one thing, not that we couldn't do, a number of different crops. One is that, we're not only farmers, we don't have to grow first, but then we end up having to produce, and then we end up having to sell, and we get out and we market. So it is a vertically integrated business in most cases. Almost every wine business is unique and slightly, their own version of themselves, but it's rare that you'd have somebody growing wine grapes and then also kind of having a side business growing, olives or something. Of course, there's examples of that. Down in Wilcox, I think the land availability makes that a little bit more plausible, because you can buy some extra acreage and possibly put some tree nuts. But I don't know of many people in the Verde Valley who have multiple crops. I can think of one example, and there's some olives there that they're also planting and selling. So for the most part, I think a lot of the growers are focusing on their grapes and what they can get out of it. Average yield, about 1.5 to 4 tons per acre. I put an asterisk up there because it depends on your density. Some vineyards choose to make the best use of their space and plant very tight together. Within different varieties, there's large variances in how much you can actually get. So that number could be 6 tons per acre and be a healthy crop. Or something like our Cabernet Sauvignon at our vineyard even if we tried, we would struggle to get 2 tons per acre. It's just real small, tight little berries. We're just not going to be able to pull that much weight off. In our planting density at the college, which you can see in that picture behind me, we're at about 950 vines per acre. So we're coming up on the kind of more condensed, higher density planting. Somewhere around 160 gallons of juice per your ton. And now current market value, about $2,000 to 2,750. There's examples on either side there, but that number keeps going up, and that number keeps going up because cost of farming keeps going up. So you're not going to get a ton of sympathy from the grape seller, from the grower if you're on the buyer side, because the cost of farming is just very high. Unfortunately, the cost of farming's getting pretty close to the prices you see there for the grapes. So with that said, most growers like to actually turn their grapes into wine, because you turn the grapes into wine and you have a almost a 4-fold net return. What we're growing here in Arizona is for the most part Vitis vinifera. There are some examples of hybrids that are a blend between the European wine grapes and Native American wine grapes. Matter of fact, down at the valley floor here, down by Oak Creek, a colder spot, some hybrids are actually doing much better than the European wine grapes. But if you get out of that bowl up on the slopes, you're likely going to be growing the Vitis vinifera that most of consumers understand and they're looking for. So wine grapes, deciduous, right about now, as we're starting to get cold, they're starting to lignify. The cells are starting to tighten up. The buds and the plant material that we're growing this year are starting to dehydrate. The grapes, the vines are starting to store carbohydrates all for next year. So that will make them cold hardy. We're at that critical point where if we did get a frost tonight, which it doesn't look like we have an issue in the next 2 weeks, but if we did get a frost tonight, we could actually have fall frost where the growth that would create our new growth next year would actually get damaged and possibly harm our crop next year. You see some pictures on the left there of what we would leave behind after pruning, which is about 2 buds. And then eventually we will have bud break sometime in the month of April, depending on our variety. And once we get that new growth, we also need to be monitor our temperatures pretty closely. The vines become active somewhere around an average daily temp of 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Here's the general growth cycle of a cluster. When you've got the fluorescence, the anthesis, the grape berries themselves do pollinate. You want to be careful. You could have physical damage of those berries, of the flowers, I should say. So you want to get good fruit set. Sometimes inadequate fruit set is an issue of nutrients. So hopefully you've got a nice, well-set cluster like you see on the second picture. That'll last for a good month and a half before we start to have engustment. And then after engustment, you get veraison, which is when you've got the onset of sugars. Once you start seeing the onset of sugars, the acid levels are as high as they possibly can be in those grapes. And at that point, your acid level is only going to go down. And then eventually, another month and a half after veraison, we'll be looking at possibly harvesting, depending on the crop. So we've got a nice long growing season here in Arizona. It's another reason why that list of varieties can be so long. You could have something that is a long period, like our Refosco, for example, is the first red to come out, and it's one of our last varieties to come out. And we don't really have an issue on either side with possible damage due to cold temperatures. So that's what I've got on grape growing for now. Because we're making alcohol, we've got to be licensed to, once the alcohol is produced. We are not required to have a state liquor license to be a vineyard, but we are required to be a licensed alcohol producer. Here's what the growth looks like. As of today, there's 109 active winery licenses. we'll see what this kind of 2020 blip might look like, but we have been on an increase. The only reason why I put those other numbers up there is just to kind of give you an idea of the department which oversees it, the Arizona Liquor Department, how many other types of licenses they deal with. Wineries are right now kind of a small factor in Arizona, but we are a growing industry for them to pay attention to. Here's actual production numbers. I wish I had tonnage of grapes, but once again, we don't have to, as growers, we don't have to report our tonnage in anywhere. We do have to report our actual alcohol production. So this is a way we can kind of gauge growth of the industry. About 185,000 cases, which is growing quite a bit. And here's kind of the top 10 producers from last year. So I'm with Yavapai College. So some of you might know Yavapai College as Prescott. That's where the main campus is. We're actually in the Verde Valley campus. So we're East County. Yavapai County's got a good amount of plausible growing, wine grape growing space. Our program is increasing in enrollment. We had to shift a lot of it to online this year, but we have the program's been designed for hands-on, either in the vineyard or in the winery. We have a certificate in enology, so that's the science of making wine. And also we take a look at the world of wine, what's out there, the business of wine, the compliance of it, or viticulture, if you want to just get into working with the earth, growing something. I find that students come with a desire to learn one or the other, and they end up doing both because they start seeing the, very ingrained connection between the two. I like this top stat here on the top left, average age 48.5. I just saw the numbers from this year. It's actually gone up. It's now 49 and some change. So these are adults. A lot of them work full time and they're working on their next career or maybe a side project. And we are going to start brewing some beer starting this next fall. So we're going to work with, we're not going to build a brewery like you see. That building down at the bottom picture, that's actually the Southwest Wine Center and our other small vineyard on campus. We won't be building a brewery per se, but we will be working with industry, and we're going to be doing our labs at local breweries while doing some of the theory-based classes on campus. So you can come see us. We're open by appointment now, Thursday to Sunday. You make your reservation right on the website, southwestwinecenter.com. I don't know if that was quick or long, or if you're still there.
Ah, you're done. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. So now, that was a good presentation from Mike as well. So we'll open the floor now for some questions. We have about 5 minutes to 5. That was just good timing. So if you have any question, you can type it in the chat box or just unmute yourself and then ask the question. The floor is open. There's something in the chat I can see. Okay. Someone said Gustav. James, thank you. Any question? No question? No for James, question, no for Mike? Okay.
For Michael, I'm not a good typist, so I better just ask it. If you live in a low area where the cold air pools in the winter time, what kind of a grape could you do in an area like that? Because I know people who have tried starting a winery and it just didn't work out because their grapes froze out or the bud break was too early or whatever. Is there a type you would suggest for an area like that?
It's a bit of a loaded question. I'd want to see the site and see just how cold it is. Probably an American hybrid, which there are some that are very cold hardy that have a good track record. I will preface all of that with saying, don't force it. It's expensive to get into the wine business, and Mother Nature will prove you wrong every time. I've also seen people kind of force it and be frosted down to the ground, and plant again and be frosted down to the ground until they learn their lesson the hard way. So it's not to say your site is impossible. It's just be very honest with yourself. You can get cold hardy grapes, and matter of fact, you can get below 32 with new growth. You need to have good air movement, and you need to have a nice dry spot. So sometimes being by water can be helpful. So if you're by water, that water can actually hold the mass of some warmth and keep your relative temperature up. However, it also keeps your humidity up. And if you've got cold temperatures without airflow, you're going to have those water molecules damage your new growth, and you're no good. So it's a balance between temperature, airflow, humidity, and I'd add soil to that as well. Linda DePaulo's saying some stuff here. Linda is one of my students, and she has some vines in Young, I believe. Linda, do you want to share what you have planted?
Linda, are you there?
You don't mean to put her on the spot, but she did add to this conversation. She's in one of the cooler sites that.
So what she said is that if you have some cold tolerance stocks, like maybe from New York, you could consider that as well from Canada. You could consider that into your vineyard. That's what he tried to say here. There was another question. I think that one goes to James. He said, do pine bark beetles affect Arizona ciders?
We're in Snowflake, Arizona, about 5,600 feet. So it gets pretty darn cold. Some nights are 6-8 degrees, but that's just the mean temperature, not really how cold it is. The first year we really blew it. We bought the normal stuff, Chardonnay and all that great stuff, spent all that money, boom, what a mistake. So this last time I did my homework and got hybrids that are special rootstocks that were developed at Cornell by the Cornell University in New York, and they are very tolerant to alkaline soil, to very cold temperatures, and very disease resistant. And so far, we're thrilled with how they're doing.
Good.
Thanks, Linda.
Thank you for sharing. There was this question, I think that one goes to James. James, you ready to respond to that?
Yeah, Isaac, I haven't seen this personally, but I have read about bark beetles attacking both pines. I mean, certainly they attack pines in this region, but also there are beetles that will attack the cypress. And so if they're stressed, they would be a little more prone to being attacked. So there's no guarantee that you will not have them. But the windbreaks I've seen, I've never seen one impacted myself. Like I said, I have read that that can be an issue.
Oh, okay. Thank you. I think we're right on time. Is there another question? I don't see any more questions. Someone said I have given up on Grape so I can get a better question push up. So I can get a better microclimate going. 15 below 0. Yeah. Okay. And then Linda, I think you already said that. Okay. I think we'll end the meeting here. I want to share a poll with you. Let's see how this goes. Just for us to get an overview, can you see the polls of what we have learned from today and also what we can do to improve it? So if you can see the polls, just participate in it, and I'll be grateful for that. Our next meeting will be in November, which will be our last meeting. And one of our speakers is actually here. Professor Ross Trusted is here. He's going to give us some economic aspect of farming and also possibly some marketing aspect. And then there is a grower in Forestdale in Flagstaff who will also be sharing with us one of the projects that they won from, I think it's from Sari, to do hydroponics at the same time using the water from the hydroponics, aquaculture to do their hydroponic, to grow their vegetables. So we get in touch with him to see if he'll be able to share that data with us to see what we can also learn from it. So if there is any other thing that you want to contact James or Mike, just feel free to contact them, or you can contact me. If there's something, then I'll try to link up with them and we'll try and get to you appropriately. Okay. Can we get a copy of the presentation? Yes, I'm going to, the presentation has been recorded. We'll get it, we'll share it with you once it's ready so that you can go back to it and regurgitate and get some things that you might have missed at this point. James also gave a PDF version of the presentation he gave that I'll be attaching as well. All right, I think we've gotten 13 people participated. Just one more minute for participation and then we'll end the poll. Please, please, please. Okay. Mike, thank you so much for making time to
Yeah,
come.
thank you guys. Happy to do it.
Mhm.
Had a tour of your operation once, Michael. It's